So the interesting thing is that limitations in hip rotation have been studied and confirmed to be a great prediction tool. A study done by Camp et al. In 2018 shown that athletes with limitations in hip internal rotation were predicted to experience back and abdominal injuries. There have actually been quite a few studies done with hip rotation and injury prediction. So for example, limitations in total hip rotation range of motion, so internal rotation and external rotation, have been linked to an increased risk of adductor strain in professional soccer players, and limitation in hip internal rotation has also been associated with an increased lower back pain in professional tennis players. A 2015 study discovered that players with decreased internal rotation of the hip may be plagued with a lower throwing velocity as the transfer of energy between the lower and upper extremity in the kinetic chain is altered. Okay, so it's pretty obvious that hip rotation is linked to an increase in performance and a decrease in injury risk. So how do we go about training hip rotation?
So first we're going to begin with going over hip rotation variations, starting from the easiest to the hardest exercises. So for this one, if you begin by leaning back on your hands and starting with your feet slightly wider than your hips, you're going to want to bring each knee to the side in one go, so trying to keep them as wide apart as possible at all times while swiveling side to side. A little bit of hip swivel is okay, but bear in mind we're trying to isolate the front of the hips, stretching, so you don't want to overcompensate too much by twisting. Okay, so for this one we're going to be a little bit more upright, and we're also going to be rotating a little bit more through the kinetic chain. Same concept, keeping the knees as wide as possible as we rotate, but this time you're going to use your hands for support as you rotate around to look around. So if you slowly rotate yourself around, use your hands for support, and then you're moving sort of like your shoulders because you're basically rotating your thoracic spine, but imagine you're trying to move your shoulders and your chest away from your hips. So stepping it up a notch for this one, we are using again the same concept with a knee staying as far apart as possible as we swivel around, and then using the arm to sort of swipe across the ground and as far away as possible. If you've ever done like a pigeon stretch with reaching off, it's kind of similar. You're just using your arm to reach overhead and around to get that stretch into the lats at the same time as rotating with the hips. This is also quite a nice one for exploring movement for the QL muscles. So with this variation, we're starting to now incorporate strength. In the 90-90 position, we're going to be lifting up the back knee, and you should notice this is quite difficult. You should start getting a burn in the muscles on the outside of the hips. In terms of rep ranges and sets, if you're just beginning, you've never done something like this before, I'd probably go for 10 reps, 2 sets. If you have done something similar to this before, you could go up to 15 reps and 3 to 4 sets. Generally speaking, it's better to always listen to the body and feel where that burn is so that you don't end up overdoing it first time round. So moving on with more strength work, you might want to bring your feet a little bit closer to the body as you do this for balance, and you're just going to be coming up into a hip hinge, squeezing the glutes, pushing the ribs down at the top. Once you get used to this and it feels okay, we can add a little weight, leaning ever so slightly forward to help you with balance. So this one's a little bit more of a challenge than an actual exercise, and here you can see I'm slightly compensating and cheating, but this is the level I'm at the moment. So you want to lift the foot before you move the legs. So with the back leg, I'm lifting the foot up, then lifting the knee, and then bringing it forward. Same with the other side, lifting the foot up and then bending the knee and bringing it back. It's a lot harder than it seems. Alright, so for this one, this is where we can't really cheat. This one's pretty difficult. So we're going to stand next to the wall, and using a yoga block, we're going to push the knee slightly into the wall so it doesn't move. So hip and knee should be nice and solid. From here, we're working on internal rotation, trying to keep the knee and hip stable while the foot comes out the way. Here I just test out how many reps you can do before you fatigue, and make sure you do the same amount on the other side. And once you get a little bit better at this, you can start playing around with adding isometrics and things like light ankle weights. So for this one, it's the same concept. We're now going to be working on external rotation, except for we're going to have the roller in line with the leg that is closest to the wall instead. So with the half kneeling variations, you're going to be pushing your hand into the wall to create tension, and you're just going to monitor your knee to try to keep it as in line with your hip as possible. We're going to be going into internal and external rotation in one movement. With this next variation, we're going to be in the 90-90 position, and we're going to be lifting the rear heel over an obstacle, something like a dumbbell will do. You should start feeling the muscles on the outside of your hips starting to burn up. Rather than recommending a specific rep range, I would go 3 to 5 reps after the burn begins in the outside of the hips. So for this last exercise, we're going to bring the heel up into internal rotation, trying not to bend your hips or spine too much. We're going to hold the stretch for up to 2 minutes until it starts to feel normal. Once you feel comfortable, we're going to be doing pails and rails at 5-second intervals. For 5 seconds, we're going to be pushing the heel down, and for 5 seconds, we're going to be trying to bring the heel up for a total of 3 sets. To finish off, we're going to do heel raise reps until the side of the hips burn out.
Another thing that's pretty common is hamstring injuries and tears. So how do we go about working on hamstring end range strength?
So to begin, we're going to be doing some dynamic hamstring hinge reaches. Here you can play around with different variations with your toes pointed either up or down.
Okay, so for this next set of exercises, we're doing hamstring pails and rails. What we're going to do is we're going to do 2 variations. The first one's going to have a little bit of a bend in the knee, and the other one's going to be locked out. If you specifically want to get strength with a locked out leg, then that obviously makes sense to do it this way. But in most exercises, you will be having a slight bend in your knee. Therefore, it's more beneficial to do it with a tiny bend in your knee. With a lot of people, when you do completely straighten out the leg, you then feel either the popliteus muscle or the nerves kicking in and really bothering you. So that's not going to be super beneficial if you're just going to be in agony and not actually feeling the hamstring, but rather behind the knee. So that's why if you do feel the area behind your knee, make sure that you just try the bent leg version. We're going to go into an anterior pelvic tilt, so it's like you're sticking your bum up and out. Therefore, you're going to elongate your hamstring and get into that hamstring stretch. I also want you to pay particular attention to keep your back nice and straight, and if you like, you can think of bringing your chest up and then forward towards your leg if you can handle that. So first we're going to do 2 minutes as a stretch. If you are hypermobile, you might need a little bit less, just listen to your body. We're going to sit here basically in this stretch until you don't feel like it's too uncomfortable. And that's when we're going to start the pels and rails. As you can see, this is the straight leg variation. This is the more specific and advanced version of the two. So for 10 seconds, I'm going to be pushing my whole leg down like I'm trying to get my foot through the box. And then for the other 10 seconds, I'm doing the closing angle, so I'm trying to bring the leg up while I'm trying to somewhat bring my whole body down in a hip hinge, maintaining an anterior pelvic tilt and a straight back. I'm going to be doing 3 sets total of these ones. As you can see, this bent leg variation is likely to be more functional for most people. It also allows you to work more on your forward fold by bringing your chest to your leg with a straight back. So again here, 10 seconds pales and 10 seconds rails for a total of 3 rounds. Okay, so for the laying variation, you need to find a box that will be weighted on one side so it won't go flying off, or you can use a wall, or even I've seen people use a tree before. What we're going to do again is we're going to stay in the stretch position for 2 minutes as you find your end range. So for the first 10 seconds, we're pushing down the way like we're trying to get our leg down to the ground, and for the next 10 seconds, we're pulling our leg towards our bodies like we're trying to bring it all the way up to our chest. Again for this, 10 seconds pales, 10 seconds rails for a total of 3 sets. I hope you guys found that video useful. If you did, please subscribe, and next week we are going to be going over beginners hip mobility routines as a follow along.